Alright everyone, and welcome to the Hoang 0 BT5 tier list. This tier list is based on a couple of criteria, but first of all, this list will have decks that have topped between BT4 and now, or decks that I think could potentially do well within the upcoming BT5 format. This data is mostly based on previous data and testing that we've done in the North American server, so give or take, this list could drastically change given time over the BT5 format. But let's get started. To kick us off, we start with Tier A, where we have Yellow Crusadermon, Red Shoutmon, and Green Rafflesiamon. So I think Crusadermon's actually arguably the best deck at the format. A lot of high-level players in North America agree as well. This deck doesn't seem to have caught on as much traction in Japan yet, so whether that means Japan hasn't caught on to Crusadermon or North America hasn't figured out the tech to beat Crusadermon, regardless, as a North American player, I do think Crusadermon is the best deck in the format. This deck is really powerful, as it not only has an insane amount of board clear, but it also has a large amount of field swarming ability via being able to call Knightmon, Starmons, and etc. off of your Crusadermon. You no longer require Anjouwomon to get the board call, so that's a really good incentive. Next, we have Shoutmon Red. Shoutmon Red, I think, is really good because of how powerful Shoutmon himself is. The Blitz mechanic is really powerful as it inflicts a lot of extra damage and plays around the fact of you getting memory choked. Shoutmon also clears a good chunk of the board as it clears anything 5k or less through its ability by shoving in a Shout or a Zeke, and then for every one of those you can clear one. So, really aggressive, really good, but it does lose to yellow because yellow is just able to clear their one stack. Red is a very one stack color, thus yellow beats red. Then we have green. Green is a really interesting color. They lost Argomon level 5 and they lost Hidden Potential. Well, not lost per se, but they went down to 1. What this means is that green has now shifted away from the Nidhogg Hercules Kabuterimon spam, and then we've entered a more stun-like variant where we use Rafflesiamon to disable Crusadermon and Shoutmon from swinging. This deck, I think, has a lot of potential. It needs a lot of testing to be done because I don't think a formula has been perfected for this deck, but I see a lot of potential as it does hypothetically have a really good matchup into the other two Tier 1 decks, minus Anjouwomon from yellow. Going on to Tier 2, if you notice, Tier 2 is really large, and that's because it's really hard to say what decks are going to be good, and Tier 2, I think, is pretty wide enough to where we can give a little bit of wiggle room. But for the most part, there are some decks that do definitely stand out amongst all the other Tier 2 decks. First of all, we have Diaboromon. I think Diaboromon is actually a really good deck. I don't think it's Tier 1 because it loses to yellow way too hard, right? But I think it's really good since it has a lot of aggression to it, an insane amount of board spam as well. It's really impressive, actually. You can take your opponent all the way from 5 to 0 if you get the proper setup. You also gain access to Rush via the Kurisarimon from BT5, and you also have a lot of consistency via the Caramon to search. So I think Diaboromon is arguably the best deck, not the best deck, but it's the best Tier 2 deck, and it's potentially Tier 1. It's maybe low Tier 1 depending. I know some people say that it has potentially a good matchup into a good chunk of the Tier 1s. I'm not entirely sure myself, so I think putting it at the top of Tier 2 is pretty safe. Next up, we have Tactimon. I think Tactimon Purple is actually the best variant of Purple, in my opinion, as it has arguably the best Crusadermon matchup, being able to clear these small bodies that Crusadermon loves to call. And not only that, but it also works insanely well with Black War Growlmon, as you're able to swing twice with its ability. So, I think Tactimon has a lot of potential. The only issue with Purple, I feel like in general, is that it's very piece-reliant, and Tactimon is the least piece-reliant Purple of all the Purple decks, so keep that in mind. Next, we have War Greymon Yellow. War Greymon Yellow was the best deck in BT4 format before COVID happened and Japan tournaments were cancelled. I think War Greymon Yellow has a lot of potential in the upcoming BT5 format. I think it also has potential to be a Crusadermon counter, right? That's what a lot of people are saying. I haven't tested this too in-depth myself, but I think regardless, the best deck of BT4 is probably still good going into BT5. It got a lot of the new tools Crusadermon did, such as Starmon and whatnot, and it also got a couple of secret techs that I'll cover in an eventual video, so we'll keep it hidden for now. Next up, we have Pluto Man. Pluto Man is a really interesting deck. We have Metalgarurumon Purple promo, which overshadowed Pluto Man for the most part in the BT4 meta, but I think Pluto Man actually potentially has a chance to overtake Metalgarurumon. And the reason why is because Metalgarurumon is significantly slower because you have to wait the extra turn and it's a main phase Digiburst. Whereas Pluto Man is you do it all on Digivolve. And there's a couple of options that you have from Pluto Man that are really impactful. Most importantly, we get Earthshaker. Earthshaker is really, really good this format, I think, depending on the matchup. Versus Crusadermon, it feels very so-so. I'm not a personal fan of it, but versus colors like red, it's really, really good. Red really likes to have that stack, and if you're able to snipe that stack, that single stack, mind you, before they can get to their big stuff, ooh, you're in such a good position. And even then, if they go into their level 6, you have access to Hell's Gate, so I think Plutomon has a really good red matchup potentially. Then we go into Metalgarurumon. Again, Metalgarurumon is still a really good deck. I think this is really, really powerful, potentially, as it has a arguably higher ceiling than Plutomon. So let's keep that in mind. I think given time for that to develop, it may potentially prove itself to be better than Plutomon, but we do have to see. Next up, we have Shine Greymon Yellow. I think Shine Greymon Yellow is really, really good. I think it is the slowest yellow deck in the format, but regardless, it is the grindiest yellow deck in the format, and because of that, I think it has potential within the tier 2 realm. Any deck that goes against Shine Greymon, if you don't close the game out fast enough, I think Shine Greymon is just able to come back immediately and take the board from there. Now we have Imperialdramon. Imperialdramon is really weird. Imperialdramon topped really recently, actually, within the BT5 format, where it was against Red Shopmon, I believe, in the finals, and it just went straight face, and Red Shopmon couldn't keep up with it, interestingly enough, because you have early aggression via Vmon, XVmon, etc. So Imperial has proven himself to be potentially really, really good this format, so let's keep it on the radar, right? Now we have Hexblaumon. Hexblaumon, super hit or miss. I think this card itself is good. I think Strip Source is bad as a mechanic, and the reason why is because it doesn't remove bodies. Not removing the bodies means your opponent can just Digivolve on top of it, and you have a really bad time. For example, Red, can they just Digivolve on top of their stack, use the Blitz mechanic, swing, and it's like, what does Hexblaumon do, right? Like, what did it really accomplish? Not much. So for that reason, I think Hexblaumon is kind of sketchy. It potentially has a really good matchup against more board-wide expansion decks like Crusadermon, again, potentially, but then it just loses to Slash and Chaos. I think the best variant of Hexblaumon is actually more of an OTK variant where it uses Fuse into the Ultimate Digimon into Omnimon Blitz, where you can inflict extra amounts of damage, or just go into the White Omnimon, the new BT5 one, and just swing in general. You're probably going to swing for 2 damage, so you can probably set up a lot of one-turn kills on that setup. But yeah, I think a off-brand version of Hexblaumon, like the OTK, maybe even Old Force Hexblaumon, is better than pure Hexblaumon. We have War Greymon coming up next, or the Greymont deck in general. This deck uses Nokia really, really well. I think this deck is tier 2 because it doesn't have the Shopmon, and Shopmon is insane in my opinion. But even without Shopmon, I think this deck is really, really good. Nokia reduces a lot of its cost. It has a really high ceiling where it has so much security attack coming out of the wazoo, and then you just go into the Omnimon and you just burst your opponent. So, really, really good potential right there. We have Rookie Rush. Rookie Rush did not receive a lot of changes in this format, unfortunately, so it's riding most of the BT4 support that it had received. But nonetheless, I think Rookie Rush will always be a deck that you can never just ignore. I think if Rookie Rush is ignored and people just forget about it, then it can resurface in the meta, because if you take out all your techs for Rookie Rush, then Rookie Rush is just uncontested, right? But as of right now, a lot of the current decks in the format, they do inherently and naturally beat Rookie Rush, like Shopmon, Crusadermon, for example. But if you play into something like Green, oh, you're gonna body Green. Green's not even funny. It's just such an easy matchup for Rookie Rush. So if people forget about Rookie Rush, it'll come. It'll come back. Don't worry about it. We have Megazoo up next. Megazoo is really good in the BT4 format, actually, where you would just hard slam Lotusmon and Puppetmons. You'd go to Chaosmon, and then you'd actually just Wolf Claw the Puppetmons out, and it was like really, really cool. Megazoo isn't very good this format, because decks like Shopmon and decks like Crusadermon just abuse it because you give over 10 memory and they just win the game. But nonetheless, I think this has potential to be, I mean, it's better than tier 3 at the very least, right? It has a solid matchup into a good chunk of the tier 2, maybe not the tier 1s, but at the very least, bottom tier 2 I feel like is pretty fair. Nonetheless, don't sleep on Megazoo. And finally, we get to Chaos Gallantmon Purple. I actually really don't like Chaos Gallantmon Purple. Initially, my first initial impression was, oh, this card it's okay. And then I tested it and I was like, oh, this card's pretty good. And then I kept testing it, and 50 games later, I was like, this is pretty slow. This is really easy to play around, and all these other notions in my head. So I still think it's a tier 2 deck. I think it has a lot of potential. You have Chaos Gallantmon, Megidramon, you have pure Chaos Gallantmon. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. but overall, not too sold on Chaos Galamon, whereas decks like Tactimon, Pluto Man, and purple Metalgarurumon, I'm pretty convinced. I actually forgot to put a deck on this list, and we're a bit far into the recording, but one turn kill purple Metalgarurumon, I'll make a little note about it in the description, I actually think is somewhere in like the middle of tier 2. You use Demonic Disaster, which is the 1 cost option that purple got, to restand a purple Metalgarurumon and just swing for a bunch, because you just restand off Black War Greymon, you have extra security attack from Greymon, and then Metalgarurumon on swing, revive 1 to fuel all of the ammo you need. So I think that's potentially somewhere in the middle of tier 2. Going on to tier 3. Ooh, tier 3, again, I think can still top. All the decks on this list I think are potentially capable of topping, but some just more than others. Tier 3 is still good though. We have Reboot Black. I think Reboot Black has a solid amount of potential, but Black hasn't proven itself in the past, and because of that, it's really hard for me to put it any higher than the top of tier 3. I could be very wrong. Black could be really sleeper, and if it is, really cool. But for right now, given the previous data we've had, both in testing and in the BT4 format, I'm going to put it in top of tier 3. Now we have Ceresmon. Ceresmon did receive hits because Argomon level 5, which was crucial to its game plan, was hit to 1, so Ceresmon doesn't have to adjust, but Ceresmon actually topped recently in the BT5 format, so because of that, Ceresmon is back on my radar personally. I think this deck has potential, as you can just use your opponent's bodies as resources, and maybe, just maybe, we could use that to accelerate versus some of the tier 2 decks. So Ceresmon, it's on my radar. I don't think it has enough evidence to support it being tier 2, but definitely on the radar. Now we have D Brigade. D Brigade is really weird. D Brigade is Super Glass Cannon. It feels like a meme deck most of the time, really, but I do see the potential in it, you know, to some relative degree. You can now use Omnimon Zwart to call back your Tankdramon, call back your Commandramons. Quite a bit of potential there, so I would keep my eye out on D Brigade as well. But as of right now, given the fact that it's very one-dimensional and it doesn't do very much else, I think it's a tier 3 deck. Now we have Nidhoggmon, or Hercules Kabuterimon. This was a deck that was heavily hit by the most recent hit changes, right? For hidden potential to 1. That significantly hit this deck. But I still think those 2 boss cards are really powerful regardless, and so I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and keep it within the tier list. It's towards the bottom of tier 3 personally, but I still think maybe, just maybe, it might still exists within the meta. It might get 1 or 2 tops, but because of that, I'm going to keep it on my radar. Now we have Metalgarurumon, or just Garurumon deck in general with Nokia. Similar to the Greymon family deck with Nokia, it does the same concept, right? But the Greymons have much more power hacking behind them. It can do a lot more to use the Nokia in its favor, as it's much more aggressive. Whereas the Garurumon deck is a bit more interesting. You have more draw power for 1, right? And you also have access to multi-attacking. So I don't think this is as good as Greymon. I think this is worse than Hexblaumon, but it's still on my radar just because Nokia herself is such a powerful card. So let's do keep that in mind. And then we have Aldamon. Aldamon 1-turn kill was apparently a thing in BT4, I'm told by certain people. Personally, I didn't see it, but you know, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. You know, maybe you can do some really fancy stuff. I don't think this deck is super good, so at the very most, I'm going to give it the bottom of tier 3. But supposedly it topped, and apparently it's pretty solid, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Overall, this tier list is really volatile to change, as we're only week 1 into the BT5 format, and tournaments have not completely begun opening back up in Japan, so given time, we'll definitely see a drastic change within this tier list. This tier list is mostly just meant to give you guys a brief idea of what you could play or what is to come within the BT5 format. So thanks for watching, and hopefully this was somewhat helpful. Just, you know, let me know in the comments down below, and sub, like, etc. Alright, thanks guys.